Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. I am excited to share my final project with you guys and the findings that we're able to find while researching this topic. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So my project is titled Separate But Together, How the United States and France Dealt with Separating from the Church. Now, when you think of separating from the church, what separation are we referring to? We're referring to an intellectual separation and a freedom of thinking separation, meaning the church will not do your thinking for you. The church will not tell you how the world works. In fact, you will determine yourself using the scientific method to develop evidence and support your claim. Now, how exactly did this revolution begin? Well, the revolution begins with something called the scientific revolution. Now, is this a revolution much like the American Revolution or the French Revolution? Was it fought with guns? Was it fought with soldiers? No, it was actually fought with the mind. It was fought with evidence and it was fought with science. So Nicolaus Teach actually defines the scientific revolution as a great movement of thought and action associated with the theoretical and practical pursuits of such figures as Nicolaus Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, and Sir Isaac Newton. Now, these four transform astronomy and mechanics during the 16th and 17th centuries. So we say to ourselves, well, how exactly did they transform? What were their discoveries? So we have a timeline of their discoveries and how they intersect with one another. So what we say to ourselves is that Nicholas Copernicus proposes this idea of heliocentrism. Heliocentrism is the idea that the sun is the center and everything else rotates around the sun. Now, up until that point, we've actually been going off a philosophy developed by Greek philosopher Ptolemy, who said that the earth is in the center and everything rotates around the earth. So since ancient Greek up until 1514, this was the belief. Here comes Copernicus, who ironically names his new theory after the Greek god of the sun, Helios, saying that that's actually not the way. The sun is in the center and we're moving around that. Now, it's not until 1609 where evidence is actually founded, where Galileo, one of the inventors of the telescope, actually discovers the phases of Venus and the four moons of Jupiter. Now, why is this discovery important? Because what it shows us is that the position of Venus and the moons of Jupiter are different. And the math actually calculates that we're all moving around the sun and they're not moving around us because of the position of these planetary objects. Now, in the same year, in 1609, Johannes Kepler develops the three laws of planetary motion. The three laws are as followed. 1. Every planet's orbit is an ellipse with the sun at focus, meaning every planet orbits around the sun and not the Earth. Number 2, a line joining the sun and a planet sweeps out an equal area in equal times, meaning the Earth will complete its rotation in 365 and a quarter day. Lastly, we see a planet's orbitable period is proportional to the size of its object, meaning how fast or how slow that the planet rotates around the sun is directly proportional to how big that planet is. Now, after this, what we see is Sir Isaac Newton developing his theory of gravity. Now, we all know the story. The apple fell from the tree, hit Newton on the head, and he discovered it. But he did a lot more than that. He showed that a force acts on an object no matter how big or no matter how small, it will affect the object's motion. Now, Newton incurs a wrath of the church for proposing this force because it is not a force created by God. It is a universal force. So, being that the church is now being questioned, we have to ask ourselves, well, how big is the church? The map you see shows the churches throughout this time. More importantly, these churches or these countries are met with a choice. Do they embrace the new way of thinking during the scientific revolution, or do they stick to the old medieval ways and allow the church to do the thinking and the advancements for them? Well, the Church of England embraces this new way. And Lisa Jardine for the BBC tells us that by 1700, there were scientific institutions across Great Britain and a commitment to science as the firm basis for the success in their commerce and industry, meaning that these scientific institutions are adapting these new ways to build England, to build the country. And such institutions, such as the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge, one of the most oldest schools in the English-speaking world, in their ivory towers, they are developing these ideas, these theories, and they are pushing them forward. Now, it's only natural that these ideas are going to be moved into English colonies, which we see from England to America or the United States. And what we see is during the American Revolution, America embraces this idea of religious freedom. So Representative James Madison actually drafts the Bill of Rights in 1791, and in that Bill of Rights, American citizens are granted the freedom of religion, the freedom to practice the religion that you choose. So James Madison does more than just believe that you should be able to practice your own religion. He actually tells us that the Church of England, if it had been established and general religion in the northern colonies, meaning the American colonies, it was among them there, if it was uninterrupted and prevailed throughout the entire continent, it would have instituted slavery and subjugation. It would have subjected the citizens to the rule of the Church of England. And when America was being founded, their separation of church and state was embedded into the Constitution, embedded into the Bill of Rights, stating that the people of the United States, the government of the United States, are separate from the church. Now, Madison believes in a freedom of conscience, meaning you have the freedom to think what you want, to think and have yourselves believe what you wish. And Irving Brandt tells us that Madison wrote a guaranteed freedom of conscience in the Virginian Constitution of 1776. 15 years before he drafts the Bill of Rights, he's already granting citizens of Virginia this freedom to think how they want. Now, on the other side of the Atlantic, France's revolution is kicking off while the Bill of Rights is being written. And in the French Revolution, we see King Louis XVI be executed for treason, but we also see Napoleon assume role of France as the emperor. And Napoleon's first priority is to establish a relationship with the papacy. So what does Napoleon actually do? Well, Napoleon recognizes that religion alone has the right to govern human societies. He's establishing that the church has the right to govern the way the society runs. And he even takes it a step further, and Louis Rayapen and Gordon Anderson actually tell us that Napoleon reaches the pinnacle of his spiritual pretensions when in 1806 he institutes the Imperial Catechism, which states that Napoleon is the supreme representative of God on earth. So to serve the emperor is tantamount to serving God himself. Meaning if you serve the monarchy, if you serve the empire, you are doing your duty to God, which is much different than how America views the church. So from when Napoleon assumes rule in France up until 1905, the church has a strong foothold in France. And in 1905, France proposes 3 principles for their separation. 1, the freedom to practice your own religion. 2, the neutrality of the churches and the states, meaning it is neutral between the two. And 3, the powers that each of those institutions have cannot override one another. They are neutral. And it's because of this law that Pope Pius denounces this separation when it happens. And we see Aristide Pierre-Henry Brand actually take this time to advocate for this separation. He serves as the Prime Minister of France for 11 terms, and he says to the Chamber in 1905 that it owes you the faculty of expressing in all independence your religious beliefs, meaning you owe it to yourself to be independent from the church and have your own religious beliefs. The church does not tell you what to believe. And much like Madison, Monsieur Briand believes in the liberty of conscience, meaning your conscience, knowing that you are aware and thinking, you have the liberty to utilize that. So in conclusion, what we see is the scientific revolution creates this era of free thinking among the people. England embraces this new wave of thinking. This new way of thinking finds itself into the American colonies. And when the United States is developed, this separation of church and state is embedded into the Constitution from the beginning of America's creation. Whereas France, while they do separate from church, like the United States, for the same reason, it takes them a century longer to do it, because when Napoleon comes into power, he states that he is a representative of God. He imbues the church is the same power as the empire, meaning that the church is God, is me. I am a representative of that God. I want to thank you all for watching. I do hope this was informative and a perfect reflection of my paper. While we did go a little bit over time, I do hope everyone enjoyed it, so thank you for watching.